Hello, welcome as always to Yesterday's Airlines. Today I'm going to be taking a quick look here on this video at the latest and final NG models Boeing 767 samples. These are available now or have been available on the CRP program of NG, so people will be receiving these if you haven't already. But NG have sent them out to me probably a little bit earlier than most people will get their copy. And of course, NG have announced their first 767 releases. One 200, a pair of 300s with winglets, and a Series 400. And of course, I have got the final samples of each of those types here to have a look through in this video. Now, if you haven't already, then I strongly suggest checking out the reviews that I've already written of these on the website, yesterdaysairlines.com. So check that out. I'm not going to go over in exhaustive detail in this video the models again, because I've already written that, and I've got a huge amount of work on at the moment, doing a lot of work on a new model database, but more about that in the future. And of course, it's the European Championships, so really you need to be watching the football. But let's get on and have a look at these NG 767 final samples, and I'll add a few of my thoughts as we do. So we'll start with the shortest and original member of the family, the 767-200. The 200 is probably my favourite of the different variants, and this sample is looking excellent. It is also the area where there is the least competition. The only vaguely modern mould for the Series 200 that exists is the Aero Classics edition, which is decent, but a little clunky in places, especially around the undercarriage. There's also the old JC Wings edition, which has got a seam, but it's still a decent enough mould. But the pair of those can't really compete with this new NG offering, which is actually really, really nice. NG have made a couple of changes to this sample since the last one I got. They've removed the tail bumper correctly, that's great. And they have modified the cockpit windows. And I have to say, I think that this edition is looking really, really good. One area that perhaps could be slightly modified is the height of the window line. It is perhaps ever so slightly too high, probably by less than a millimetre, but it is a little bit noticeable. Certainly not a deal breaker by any means, but that is something that I think is true across all of the 767 samples you'll see here in the video. Just a minor mod there required to slightly lower that window line. Moving on, we've got the 767 Series 300s. The 300 obviously far and away the biggest selling model of the aircraft, and the two variants that we've got here both sport the blended winglets but have different engine options on them. We will start with the Pratt & Whitney PW4000 engine variant. Now obviously both these 767s look largely the same. In fact, even these engines look quite similar to each other, but there are differences. Again, the model looks really good. The mold itself, the overall mold, is excellent. Now, I'm no master on wingleted 767s, being firmly a classic guy. I don't own a single one, in fact, in my collection with the winglets on. And some people are saying that these winglets look a little bit thin. It didn't really stand out to me too much when I looked at the images, but at the same time, I'm no master in this area, so I will defer to people who see a lot more blended winglets 767s than I do. You guys can decide whether you feel that it's too thin at the winglets or not. But otherwise, the mold overall is looking great. There wasn't a lot that needed to be done on this variant. Moving over to the CF6 powered, the General Electric CF6 powered 767-300, and again it looks almost the same because the engines are the only difference. They've made significant changes to both of the hot sections on the engines, or at least it looks like they have. Maybe it's just the better printing and shading here. They look pretty good. They could perhaps both be slightly modified, but it's really minor, I think. Overall, I would say that these 767-300s are looking really good, unless those winglets are putting you off. But for me, they don't. I didn't, like I say, didn't even notice it myself. In every other regard, this is clearly the best 767 that is available in 400 scale. Again, competition comes primarily from old molds the seamed mold from JC Wings Gemini and the unseamed but a little bit shapeless Phoenix version, which is a pretty decent mold. They're both nice, but this one is definitely looking better to me. So the last variant to look at is, of course, the 767-400ER. And this is the one which NG have had the most hassle with. In fact, most manufacturers seem to have some trouble with it because it's so different to a standard 767. It's not just longer. Now, there's been a lot of 767-400s entering the market recently. You've had the JC Wings Gemini mold, which is pretty poor all over, really. And you've had an excellent version from Panda Models, which is really, really impressive. This 767-400 from NG, it's somewhere in between those, I feel, at the moment, but much closer to the Panda than to the JC Wings Gemini. Overall, it looks like a good 767, and it's sharing most of the same components with the shorter variants. And it does have some really nice features on it as a 767 itself. However, there are a couple of areas that I would like NG models to modify. Firstly, even though this version has the new and different main gear that a 767-400 does, the landing gear doors are a completely different shape to the other variants. I'm not overly impressed by the tooling of the main gear doors. I feel like the shape is a little bit formless and they're certainly not large enough. It's showing a bit too much gear leg for my liking. Another issue with it, which is still pretty minor, is on the underside, the positioning of the NACA air intakes, the two little triangular intakes just around the wing root. On most 767s, they are asymmetrical in their position, but on a 767-400, they should both be in the relative same position on either side, and on this mold sample, they're not. So that's a minor problem that NG could ideally fix, and those are the 2 points that, for me, make this sample inferior to the Panda Models one at present time. You could argue that it doesn't have quite the right nose-down attitude of a 767-400 as well. It's slightly level at the back. The Panda Models version has this as well. The Gemini version has incredibly over-the-top tail height in comparison to the nose height and looks silly. So it's, again, maybe they just need to slightly increase the size of the tyres, because on a 764 the tyres are not 767 tyres, they're actually 777 tyres. So maybe that's enough to give that a little bit more of an upright stance at the back. But overall, it still looks like a good 767-400. Just in detail, I think it is presently slightly inferior to the Panda version. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this quick look at the final or latest 767 samples. There's a small amount of work I'd like to see done to fix up the 767-400, maybe lower the window line on the others as well, but a tiny amount. But overall, I think these are excellent 767s. There's a huge amount of potential for the type in 400 scale, especially for the Series 200 and 300s. And I'm sure there's quite a high demand for the type. I want to thank NG Models for sending these through to me, as always, and thank you guys for watching. If you enjoy the video, please chuck a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye from Yesterday's Airlines.